Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. In each episode, we invite guests to have honest conversations about their mental health journeys with the goal of destigmatizing mental health within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Due to the nature of the podcast, we'll be discussing a variety of mental health topics and possibly triggering experiences. While we and the majority of our guests are not trained professionals, we encourage you to practice self-care while listening and seek professional guidance if you or a loved one is in need of support. With that said, let's start the episode.
Hello, my name is Ty Tanioka, and I would describe my mental health journey as an experience I've learned to be grateful for.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Changing Tides podcast. My name is Matthew Yonemura, and I am your host. Welcome back to another episode if you are a returning listener, and welcome if this is your first episode you've listened to. Very happy to continue this podcast. I was thinking about it the other day and realizing how many episodes we have. I didn't really realize or think about the fact that we are currently on our 10th episode. Just checked. This is indeed our 10th episode. And all of our guests have been amazing. I've been honored to have the conversations with these guests and then to share them with the audience. And it's no different with this one. This is another amazing episode. It's a longer interview, which is why I'm going to try to keep my talking right now kind of short. But this person was one of the original speakers at the very first Changing Tides event. He was one of the original crew members to help establish Changing Tides, and he is still a crew member of Changing Tides. With all that said, I'm so happy and so excited to introduce the interview that I had with Ty Tanioka. Ty, welcome back to the podcast, but now you are in the other seat. Thank you so much for taking the time to do 2 episodes. Before we jump into any questions I have for you, I'd like to give you the floor to kind of describe why you describe your mental health story the way that you did.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, Matthew, thank you for having me back. I'm glad I made it back. Welcome back. It feels different to be on the other side of things. So
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I describe mental health journey as something I've learned to be grateful for because I think, well, that's an important part was learning it. I think that kind of insinuates, it wasn't something I was always grateful for. I think it was something that I kind of regretted or not regretted or just, I guess, had a hard time coming to terms with and couldn't see gratitude in it and couldn't see, it was more along the lines of why me and why am I having to go through this or why should I be going through this? Or, it's all kind of interconnected. And I think I'm grateful and I'm lucky and I'm privileged to say I've gotten to a place where I have gratitude for right now. But I think, it took time to get there. And so, I think the gratitude is related to, several different things. I think there's different aspects to it. I think I've gotten to a point where now having gone through, struggles with my mental health for a little bit and, a low time for a little bit, I think that has gotten me to a place that has strengthened me in so many ways. I think it's strengthened the relationships that I have with my family, with my friends, with the people who were there when I was at, not so great moments. It's strengthened my relationship with myself. I think it's gotten me to a point where I've learned to learn about myself and who I am and how I react and, how to be kinder to myself. I don't think I would have gotten to this point if I hadn't gone through this journey and this experience of working through tough things and working through things, that, I had to because of where I was at. And I think also it was just a great, gratitude is a funny thing, I think, for us to think about. But, I think another part of it is just the amount of, I guess, quality of life or just experiences and feelings that I've felt too. I think, in my opinion, some of the hardest feelings and feelings that maybe sadness or heartbreak or things like that, or hopelessness, like I feel like they have such depth in these emotions and you feel them almost sometimes stronger than you do happiness and more positive feelings. And so I think I felt things when I was going through a lot of stuff harder than I've ever felt any other kind of emotion. And it, uh, there's kind of a beauty in that, I think. It kind of,
Mm,
in a way, also led to when things did get better and things, I started having more positive emotions and could come out of that, felt those stronger too. I was happier to be with people when I worked my way to that process or worked through the process, or I was, showing more love for my family because I had just experienced all the care in the world that they had given me during a hard time, that because of that, it also led to a lot of great things too. And so I think that's kind of related to gratitude for me.
definitely.
Yeah.
I think I mean, everyone always says like you kind of have to get to the other side.
Yep.
And I think what you just touched on is exactly that. It's that you have to kind of go through these low times to get to the other side. And then I just couldn't agree with you more. Like the
Yeah.
way that it, it's unfortunate that it kind of has to go through that way of like you have to go through these low times to really appreciate the high times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm exactly on the same page as you.
I think one thing
Go
that
ahead.
comes to mind, yeah, sorry. One thing that comes to my mind is now I'm remembering the first time I actually ever thought about it that way. And the first time that actually triggered this, I guess, gratitude for what I'd been through is when I was listening to a podcast, and the individual speaking had talked about, she was a performer. She was like, she made music, she did stand up, and she talked on the podcast about how um, she was grateful for her mental health. I think she had anxiety and like stage. I think she got a lot of social anxiety and nervous on stage and all of that. And she was saying, I actually am super grateful for it because it actually makes me the performer I am today. It
Mm,
makes me good at what I do. And when I first heard that, I was like, well, how does that make sense? And she talks about, ever since she was a kid, she'd always had social anxiety or a lot of anxiety talking with people or being in big groups. And then she talks about how it made that, because of her anxiety of not wanting to come across as socially awkward or weird, it made her super quick on her feet, super witty. She was, she said like, in order to get out of an awkward situation, she cracked jokes and made people laugh,
mm,
and was always and learned how to make jokes on the spot, and or how to make people laugh and how to build connections really fast. And it was all because of her anxiety that she, and now as a comedian, as a performer, she was like, it's because of that that allowed me to be good at what I am now. It's not, maybe it wasn't the healthiest way to get there,
mm,
but she was saying, now I can be a comedian. I can come up with jokes. I can build relationships with people because I had spent my whole life trying to deal with this anxiety that I was going through, and it manifests in this way. And when I heard that, I was like, that's super interesting because I can relate to that in a different way in my job and my career. I think, I'm very type A. I've always thought of myself as that way. And in the line of work that I do, a lot of it is like I'm working account management. And so a lot of it is being able to be organized, being able to think about different scenarios, be able to have backup plans. And, that's stuff that I've been doing my whole life because
right.
I think in general, I'm an anxious person. I want to make sure I have things figured out. I want to make sure I have a backup plan. I want to know if this goes wrong, what do I have planned next? That's always been a case. And I always thought of like, oh, it's just because I'm an anxious person and because I can't chill or I
Mm,
can't be relaxed or whatever. But, and that still might be true in some ways. But because of that, it makes me really good at my job. And I found a place where that is, that's the goal. That's what you want to do. You want to be able to do that. And so in kind of in a similar way, I was able to look at it and be like, well, I'm kind of grateful that I am that way. I'm grateful for this, because was such an anxious person sometimes. It's allowed me to build skills and allowed me to be better and allowed me to be, who I am today.
right.
And so that was the other thing why that was the one thing that triggered that thought of gratefulness for me. That was a really important, I think, moment, was to hear that and be like, well, I've never thought of thinking of a struggle that way, or a part that I wasn't, a low moment, to turn that lens and be like, it's actually something I'm super grateful for and makes me better at who I am and doing what I
Right.
do.
I think it's great because it just got super dark in here. But I also think it's great because you're trying to take a lesson away from every moment.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, I wish I could add more, but I'm kind of just repeating what you're saying because I
Yeah. Yeah.
agree with everything you're saying so much. But I feel like we've kind of brought a suspense to the listeners because we're talking about your story in hindsight. If you
Right.
don't mind just sharing what you're comfortable with about your
Yeah.
what about the experience you went through that kind of brought you to where you are today.
Sure. Of course. I think, in hindsight, when I look back, I think there was always things now looking back, I always laugh when the parents. I was like, there's things I did as a kid that I think, I think it wasn't just a quirk. I don't think it was just a cute little thing I did. I was like, I think that might be related. But for me, I think when I first realized and I guess addressed my mental health issues that I was going through was in my freshman year, my first year of college. I had just come out of high school, and I guess it kind of starts there with high school, and like coming out of it was I was lucky. I enjoyed my high school experience. I had a lot of great friends, great relationships with people there. I was super happy with. I was involved. I was ASB president there. I was involved in sports in high school. I was in clubs, and then I was going to be going to UCLA, which had been my dream school since I was a kid. Those were all the positives and great things. And I had also just come out as gay over the summer between high school and college, and that was a freeing moment too. And so I was looking ahead to college as I just come out. I was so excited to be at the school of my dreams. This was going to be where I could imagine myself. No one's going to know who I was there. I could have the experience of college that everyone kind of dreams about. And so I think I was riding a high. I was on cloud nine. And then so within the first couple of weeks or the first months or so of college, I think, I was having a really great time. I was enjoying the people I was meeting and having a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I remember it got to a point where I just started kind of always feeling a little bit of like butterflies in my stomach. I was kind of anxious. I didn't know why. I think I wasn't like I had exams coming up or anything like that. It was just kind of, I couldn't pinpoint why I would be feeling nervous at times. And then it kind of got to the point too, where it got worse than that I was like sitting in class and then I just couldn't focus. I was like not able to even like hear what was going on and what was going on in the lecture. So then I would, spend a whole lecture and wasted. And then it progressed to a point where, I couldn't even really think about going to class. I remember one day I was walking halfway, I think, to my class, like was so nervous, just like turned around and went straight back to my room because I couldn't go to class that day and couldn't go to lectures. And so I just remember the biggest thing. Oh, and then, I think throughout the day, I just couldn't really remember things that had happened that morning or things that had happened yesterday. I was like, what did I do? Why can I not remember? And that like really kind of freaked me out because I was like, how can I not remember what I was doing? And I was just so distant from what was going on in my day-to-day life because I think I was just so hyper-focused on feelings of just this anxiety and nervousness. And so I think it kind of all culminated to one morning. I think I just woke up, just couldn't slow down my breathing, was hyperventilating, just couldn't calm myself down. I think, eventually a friend came in and helped me out and, calmed me down, was like, okay, we're going to go take you to, they call it CAPS. It's the center for, it's like kind of like our, like where they have therapists on campus therapists and mental health professionals to work with students. And so that was my first time ever coming into contact or talking to anyone, a mental health professional. And so my friend took me and he was like, we're just going to have an appointment, see what they think. So that was my first intake appointment. I talked it out with the therapist and just, I told her, I don't know why, everything was going great. There's no reason for me to be feeling this way. Like I shouldn't be feeling this way. And that was kind of a lot of the sentiments I had where it doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be feeling this way. There's something wrong with me because why would I be feeling this way when everything's going right? And, I talked it through and she was like, I think you have anxiety. I think you have like a lot of anxiety going on and there's a lot of stressors. In my head, I was like, what stressors could there be? But, I think I was at a point where I was just so hard on myself all the time and so critical. And we all don't realize, even when there are a lot of great things to be grateful for, it was the first time I was living away from home. I had put so much pressure on myself to make this the best instead of just letting it be the experience it was. I had so much pressure. I was like, this has to be the best college experience that I had. And, I have to do good in classes. It's the first time doing college courses. And so there was a lot of stressors that I think I just couldn't let myself see because I was only focused on the positives and making everything positive. And so, so that was kind of the height of it was, with that kind of like anxiety attack and panic attack. And after that, it was a period of time where that lasted, but eventually I think just hearing that looking back, I think that's what I needed was just to hear that validation from a trained professional of like, yeah, there could be something going on, that there's an actual reason for why you're feeling this way. You're not, making it up. You're not wrong for feeling that way. it's just, you can't help it. There, you just have some anxiety that's going on. And so I think after hearing that and going through that and seeing that therapist, that really helped me to kind of realize, okay, there is a reason for why I'm feeling this way. I'm not making it up. Now let's work through it. And so I think that was kind of the, I guess, the main point that I look back in my journey of, like, that was really the turning point for me to, I guess, for now, the worst that it got, I'm lucky to say. And so ever since then, it's just been, it's a continued experience. You deal with anxiety here and there, and there's good days, there's bad days. But yeah, that was probably the turning point for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Um, I can relate to a lot of what you just said because, when we recorded my episode, I
Mhm.
felt the same way about my senior year of high school.
Yep.
It seems like everything's supposed to be going like this perfect direction. Why am I feeling this way?
Right.
So, I only say that not to make it about me, but just to say like it can affect anyone at any
Yeah.
time,
Yep.
even when everything's supposed to be going well. Like
Exactly.
something could be affecting you. Just to kind of go off of the things that you just shared, you said there were some quirks or some little moments that you were like looking back in hindsight, you were able to say to your parents, like, "Oh, I think these were kind of hints at me having anxiety." Um, what were these hints that before your freshman year at UCLA, like what do you think kind of could have been precursors that maybe you just didn't know it was anxiety at the time?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just funny. I mean, and then here, I don't know, it could be totally normal and natural and stories that everyone's like, oh yeah, I do that too. But I remember one thing I was thinking about. I remember I was telling my parents when I was a kid, I always had to like double check every lock in our house and make sure like things were locked. I was like,
Oh,
I was like, go to the front door, make sure it's locked, go to the back door, make sure it's locked, go to like windows, make sure. And it's not like I watch like a bunch of scary movies or anything like that. I don't know why. And so that was like a one little quirk, like every night. I always did that. And like it was just became a routine. Or there's other like just like routines that I had like before going to bed. I had to go like say goodnight to my parents and like did like a whole kind of like ritual, like sort of weird thing over every single night. And it was just like my mom was like, no, it was like a cute little, quirk that you did. I was like, maybe, or maybe, that was, kind of weird for a little kid to be doing, or different for a little kid. But and then I think just, in general, just as a kid, I think I probably had a little more anxiety than most kids did and wasn't as free thinking or worry free as others were at the age. But I think those were kind of like just funny stories that I always talk to my parents about now. I'm like, everything that was weird. And they're like, no, we like thought that was just, a cute little thing you did. But so I'll never know, I guess. But it's just funny to kind of now when I think back, I was like, oh, maybe that was a little more to that than like maybe we should have unpacked that at the moment. But yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I feel like there are definitely like little quirks that we have as kids, but you know, and maybe that is maybe those kind of quirks, maybe it's like they are anxiety even if you don't get diagnosed or don't have to get
Yeah.
treated for it. Like
Yeah.
it still just might be anxiety for kids,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And then, kind of to follow up on you actually seeking help, um, did it cause you anxiety or did it cause any fear when you did go see the UCLA therapists?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was just so, since it was like the day of that I had like just had the panic attack, just like broken down. And I think when my friend, I was super lucky to have a friend who had experience going to see a therapist, had known what it was like. And he was the one that was like, you need to go, like, we're going to go. And I think at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, like I got to like my breaking point, like, yeah, let's go. Like, I don't know what else to do. Like, it sounds something has to happen. Like, I need to go. And so, but I do, owe a lot to a friend who was able to be there, who was so versed in how mental health works and how to even deal with a situation like that to take me there. So I think it wasn't as much as a process of like thinking about going for a long time. I think at that point I hadn't even thought about seeing a therapist
Mm,
to be frank. I think it hadn't crossed my mind ever that there could be, a way to get out of this funk. I think that's exactly what I saw it as. Like I was thinking, it's a funk. I'm hoping I'll just wait it out. Hopefully, like I've never felt this because I'd never felt that before. I'd never experienced that. I didn't know how to pinpoint what it was, and so Yeah, so I think for me, it was kind of a moment of I didn't really think too much about it, and I just went with it and went there. But I will say, I think after that, which is kind of related to another issue of that we face in mental health, but I remember I had my intake appointment and they had said, here, we'll set you up for another appointment. We're pretty booked, we're pretty slammed. It'll probably be like a month to your next appointment. And I remember thinking, at that time, because I had just everything had happened. I was like, that seems so long from now. Like, I don't think I can keep going like this for another month. I don't think I can I want to work on something now. I want to fix this now. And then eventually, things luckily did get better. I think, like I said, it was just that what I needed was to hear that and to understand what was going on, to feel like a little more of to have a grip on things. And so eventually when that month appointment came, I ended up canceling it. I didn't go, which is, looking back, probably I should have, but I think I was like, okay, cool. I'm better. I'm feeling good. And so so I didn't follow up, and then I didn't do therapy for a long time. And then eventually within the last year or so, I've gotten back into it just from a different lens, from a different mindset, for different reasons.
Right.
But now I'm back in therapy, and, I'm grateful that I am. And, yeah, so I haven't always been super proactive about it, but I think I've gotten to a point now where I am and trying to be better about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the one of the great things about this, not like great awakening around mental health, but like this like opening of the conversation is like you could go to therapy no matter what your situation is. If you're
Yes.
doing amazing, you could
Yes.
still go to a therapist and talk to them about, you had a little bit of stress this day, you could talk through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, because that is like, I think we need to flip the script on how we see therapy and how we see mental health services in general, right?
Right.
I feel like it's been continually perpetuated in society that everything is reactionary. Like, you bring in the mental health specialist and professional once things have gone awry, once things are once you've hit your breaking point. And I think that in itself is such an unhealthy way for us to be seen in society. And like, we have so many things instilled in us that like we let so many we have such high stress levels at work, in school, in starting in high school, trying to get into high schools, and trying to get in colleges, trying to get in internships. There's so much stress around us at all times that we don't have anything to counter that. We don't have anything to help us deal with that stuff. And so until you hit your breaking point, and then you're like, okay, yeah, now I should probably go see a therapist, or yeah, I should probably get some help for it. Versus, I mean, arguably, I think, to your point, even when things are going really well in your life, that might be the best time to be
Yeah.
getting a therapist, because as you know, we've talked about, as we know, one kind of hurdle for therapy is finding the right therapist. It takes time for a lot of people. It takes a couple of therapists to figure out until you find someone you're comfortable with. And so, when you're at a time where you are feeling good and you're feeling like, feeling, yeah, I guess in a good spot, that could be the perfect time to start looking, because it might not be a one-time fine, like, got it, first person I found in this Rolodex, I'm gonna call this number, that's gonna be my therapist.
Right.
Take a month, it could take months. And so, start the process now, because, it's like physical health. We get physicals not because we're feeling anything wrong with us. We do it to make sure there's nothing wrong, or if we find something, we can treat it, in the coming, in the future. Or it's like when we invest, why do we invest money? We're not investing,
Right.
or like life insurance, we sign up just in case something bad happens, like you'll be setting up. It should be the same way. That's how I thought about it now. And that's the reason why I've gone back into therapy, is because life is unpredictable. You never know. And I want to make sure I have things set up that if something happened where was struggling, I have an outlet that I can go to that is ready for me, that I can just kind of have in the back of my mind. And it makes me feel just so much better my every day, that, yeah, something's going to come up. I know something will. And when it does, I'll have a healthy outlet to deal with it. And until then, it's also just helps your day to day. It helps your week to week. You can always be a better person. And so
Right.
why not be the best version of yourself that you can be, I think. So yeah, you bring up a really great point.
there's like a million analogies that could be made about why like you should see a
Yeah,
therapist, or could like you like open up to the idea of seeing a therapist before you
yeah,
need one. But like no one's gonna go run a marathon and run a marathon well without training before it.
exactly.
So I mean, I don't know. I could go on and on and on, but the point
Yeah.
is, therapy isn't just to fix something. You kind of want to. You could get ahead of the situation.
Yes, yes.
So I know you mentioned your family before this,
Yeah.
and I'm just curious because in telling your story, I was curious about when you started cueing into your family, like, hey, I know I'm away from home at the moment. I'm at
Mhm.
school. I'm wondering when you kind of cue them into like, I think I have anxiety, or I was diagnosed, or I went to see the school therapists. At what point in the process did you tell your family?
Yeah, I think, it's hard. It's kind of fuzzy looking back on that period of time. But I think it was around maybe, I can't remember if it was right after I had gone seen the therapist. I think it was.
Mm.
Um, and I think, the anxiety had kind of continued for a bit. I had was still feeling kind of the nerves and things like that throughout the week. And I think um, at one point I'd gone to an event. That's what it was. I'd gone to an event at school. I think it was like a movie showing or something like that. And the same thing happened in the middle of it. I was like, I need to leave right now. I can't deal with this right now. Like I'm feeling super nervous. I'm super antsy. So I left. And I think I just was overwhelmed at that point too again. And I remember I called my dad. And I just said, hey, like I think it was, I didn't know what else to do. I was like, I just was like at this event, I had to leave because, and he was like, like what's going on? And I think I just broke down, and I was like, frankly, I was like, I don't know. I've been feeling this way for, the last couple of weeks or so. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And I'm just really stressed out about it. And I don't know what to do. Um, and so I'm from Orange County, but so it's still like, like an hour or so drive. But I think my dad, talked to my mom, and I just was walking back to my dorm and I got a text from my mom. I was like, we're on our way. We don't have to do anything. We're just gonna come see you. And so, I was so lucky, but my parents, my family, and my siblings, they got in the car, drove out to UCLA. I think we like pulled up in the parking lot. My mom had brought like home cooked food, and we just sat there, and we didn't even have to address it really at that point. I think they were just, how are you? Like, what's going on? Like, and it's something about a home cooked meal and just, having family who you just know you associate with comfort. Um, that really helped me in that moment and got me through a lot of it. And then I think from there, that established a new relationship with my parents and with my family. And from there, it was the little things that my parents did that I'm so grateful for. And then I think, I guess, are examples of things you can do. They're not mental health professionals. They hadn't dealt with, necessary uh, me or any of my other siblings going through the same things. But after that, my dad was texting me, I think, every morning for a few weeks or so, just how's today? How are you feeling today? And it was just one text a day that I always knew someone was checking in on me. And then my same thing with my mom, I think, was asking me how things were going, and asking if I want to come home for a little bit or things like that. And so that was just the ways that they showed up for me. And then, so that, I think, in the moment of, like I said, that peak of the moment and when things were bad, that was how they just continued to just be there for me. And I think they weren't pushy. They weren't, it was just everything that I think I needed in a very subdued way. And that was, and same with my siblings. I think they just were super supportive at the moment and not forcing me to feel a certain way or forcing me to think about things. I think it was just respecting, but knowing that I could know that I had someone fall if I needed to. Um, I think since then, things have also progressed in different ways. Like after going through that, like I said earlier in the beginning of this interview, I'm grateful because I've built a relationship with my parents that's in a different way. I wouldn't say stronger, but it built another layer of my relationship with my parents and my dad. I think my dad's opened up super, or my dad has just like really talked about and opened up about his feelings and like struggles that he's dealt with. And he mentioned to me, he dealt with anxiety. And on the theme of gratitude, it was funny. I remember after I had gone through that period of time, my dad one day had texted me, or maybe told me in person, I can't remember. He said, I'm really grateful you went through that. And I think most people would be like, what? Like, that's weird. Like, why would your dad say he's grateful that you just had a panic attack, or, I was dealing with anxiety? And then he was like, he followed up and said, because I know that, you got through that. You know what it's like. You now can pinpoint what that feeling is like if you ever go through it again. And you can also realize, like, you got through it and you figured out a way to get through it. And if it ever comes up again, and he was, it definitely probably will, you'll know how to get through it, and if you don't, you'll know that you can get through it, and you'll know what you need to do. And so that was I think something that stands out to me to this day, and I'll never forget, was hearing that from my dad say that, because it's true. I think, and that, I guess that was another way of instilling gratitude for me. And then, yeah, I think in general, it's just built an open. I think another story I have is that it was like a memory that was triggered and locked that I didn't know I had. I think, but all of a sudden, I remember one day, I remembered when we were little, I think me and my brother were at like a church event or something. Like, we were pretty little, and I think we were at a table with my dad and another adult, and they were just talking. And I now can remember him talking to that person and saying, yeah, like, I've been struggling. I've been, there's a lot of things that have been going on in life, and it's been hard. And, I think I was able to get out of it because I had my family, and I knew I had to be there for my family. And so I don't know how I remember this memory, but it made me realize, he had been at the time talking about his struggles with how he was doing mentally and his mental health. And it just made me realize that was a key thing that probably I didn't even realize at the time allowed me to feel like I could talk to my parents, and that I could have that comfort and know that I could open up to them. I think without them ever necessarily directly telling me, like, if you're ever struggling with your mental health, that you can tell me. Like, that wasn't a conversation we ever had. But there's so many other signifiers out there that parents can do, I think, or friends can do, to let someone know that they'll be there for you, even if it wasn't that direct conversation on mental health, even if it's just, that they're empathetic people, that they're not quick to judge, that they are okay with you being open with who you are. Like, all those things help people know that, okay, you're a person that I can talk to, you're a person that I can open up to about.
I've gotten goosebumps numerous times, but I wanted you to be able to finish your story just because, like, I know that I've been super, like, my dad. I've been
Yeah.
super lucky to
Yeah.
have my dad because he's open about mental health and his struggles.
Yeah.
But I love to hear, like, any father figure open up about mental health,
Mhm.
especially of that generation,
Yeah.
because they grew up very much so in the era of, like, locker room talk or
Yeah.
whatever, however you want to identify the lack of discussing emotions.
Right.
However you want to call it, whether it's locker room talk or just like toxic masculinity, there's all these different things that generation, like, oh, it's taboo to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear that you had this support makes me really happy because I don't know, not only is it like a kudos to your father, but like it makes me happy that you had him and your whole family, of course.
Yeah.
But just like the way that like our dads grew up, it was so different. So
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
amazing.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I'm super lucky.
we're taking a quick break to introduce Anchor, the sponsor of this podcast. Anchor is free, first and foremost, which is amazing. Who doesn't love free? And you can record everything directly into Anchor. It's so easy to use Anchor. That's how you are listening to this podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, the Anchor website. You're listening to it because I uploaded this podcast episode to Anchor. If you want to start your own podcast, I highly recommend Anchor. It's made this whole process so easy. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So you've discussed the role that your family has played, but you're sharing this story here, but you also, at the very first May event for Changing Tides,
Mm-hmm.
uh, back in 2018, you were one of the speakers, and I know that was only 3 years ago,
Yep.
but the what's it called? The landscape for mental health has changed so much in just 3 years.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to share your story so publicly? And was it like the first time you shared it so publicly, or?
Yeah. I think up to that point, I think I had shared it with just like in conversations with one-on-one conversations with friends or with people, or, my family. but it was a experience. It was a journey to get to where I wanted to feel okay uh presenting. I think it was more of a question of me questioning whether I was uh fit, or if I was like, yeah, if I had the right to be sharing a story like that. And it was for so many reasons. I think I had so many struggles, which eventually made me realize why I should share my story. It was because, yeah, like I said, I think it was, at first I was like, no, like I shouldn't, because like I was playing the comparison game, right? I was playing the comparison of struggles. I was like, people have gone way worse. There's so many, more intense stories than mine. Like, you should find someone else who is more, I guess his story is more valid to share. And, I looking back, I realized that was the wrong way to look at it, but I couldn't help it. And it was fair. I think that I felt that way. I just think I had thought of it as, it's just anxiety. There's people who have such worse struggles than I do. Let's find someone else who can share a more impactful story. I think I felt that way for a long time. And then, I think that was where I realized that's the point of me sharing my story, is to show that there's no one look at mental health. As we talked about, your and I's experience, that was the reason why we didn't think we could have anxiety, or we could have anything wrong with us, because you and I probably had never seen someone who had been super successful, or who had, I don't want to say super successful, as someone who had, gone through the things we did and struggled, and or at least people who had been open about it. And so it made me realize, well, at that moment, okay, maybe I can be that person for someone. And it doesn't have to be the most intense or the most difficult story for you to share to make an impact in someone else's life. And so I think when I look back on the audience too, there was a lot of older adults there, and parents or grandparents there. And I think that was another story or another group that I wanted to be able to target and shed some light onto that idea as well, as that, yeah, it doesn't hurt to just check in on your kids, because yeah, you might think that there is completely nothing going on wrong with them. You might think that they're thriving in high school, or they're thriving in college, and that everything should be great for them. Like for me, I just want, well, this is a reminder that all you have to do is check in, because there could be a lot more going on, even if you don't think so. And, an outward appearance or what they tell you is not always the most accurate thing. And so I think that was ultimately what made me feel confident and comfortable enough to share my stories, because yeah, there's so many different, I guess, ways of mental health. There's no one story, there's no one person, there's no one character quality that fits, anxiety or depression, or, there's so many just different stories to share. And so it didn't feel right for me to ask other people to open up about their mental health if I wasn't willing to, own and be proud and share my story too. So yeah, I think that was ultimately why I decided to speak at the event.
I couldn't agree more, because like I come from a very privileged life.
Mhm.
So like when I started opening up about my story, I I also realized the same as you. It's like no matter what your perspective is or your background, it still isn't super openly talked about,
Yeah.
but you could I was like, maybe I could be that person for someone that realized like you could discuss this with someone else.
Yeah.
And I think you make a great point about the audience of it being, older people, like an older generation, because I feel like a lot of parents kind of think if I were to ask, like, oh, how was school today?
Mhm.
That's, maybe they'll open up, like maybe, but like for us, all I feel like we all just think it's, oh, it was fine.
Yeah.
But I think how was school today versus how have you been lately, or just however you check in, it's very
Yeah.
different. It offers a very different dialogue.
Yeah.
Um, once you spoke, I feel like I know the answer. But once you did speak, how was it received?
Yeah. It was, I hope well. It was no, but it really was humbling. I think I had, parents come up and just, thank me for talking about it, and, you know, tell me that they are just, it opened their eyes to a lot of things, and that I think I was lucky. Got to, in their eyes, represent the youth. And they had said, I'm so grateful to realize that our future is in good hands. I think someone had said, because they said, it's amazing. I would have never been able to talk like that. I would have never been able to tell my parents anything like that. I would have never been able to tell my grandparents stuff like that. Like like you said earlier, they were such a different generation, especially within the API community. There's so many nuances there that we could spend another whole hour going into. But um, and so I think that was kind of the reaction that I got, was a lot of hope for, I think, the older generations to realize that, yeah, the youth of today are very much so, I think, in a better place as far as confronting their emotions and their feelings and being able to express them and being able to be open about them and being open to help, I think, and not seeing it as a weakness. I think, we've seen it as a strength, and we see it as a positive thing of being able to be in touch and in tap with your emotions and to be proactive about how to deal with them. So I think that was kind of the reaction I got. And I think, yeah, opened up, hopefully, the older generation's eyes and perspective on how we can make the next generation different from the way that they've dealt with it. Because I think, yeah, to your point, our grandparents, obviously, I think, were very tough and probably weren't having these conversations we had. And so even our parents, I think, were the products of that, felt like that they needed to replicate that. I think there's a little bit more of a disparity between us and our parents' generation. I think we're probably flipping the script a little more. At least it feels like in this area of mental health, it seems like more of a dramatic difference than it probably was between our parents and our grandparents' generations.
Definitely. And I think there's a lot of aspects of social media that I really dislike.
Yeah.
And say with the internet in general, like it could be a very toxic space. Like I know, like I personally have had to take breaks from social media. I'm sure many others definitely have.
Right.
But one thing that's amazing about it is the way that information could get out there so quickly. And like, I mean, in certain ways, that's great. In the
Yeah.
sense of like mental health and opening up the dialogue, like people are much more aware about their peers or celebrities or athletes going
Yeah.
through their mental health struggles. And then that kind of opens up the dialogue even further.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the pluses to the resources that we have with social media.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to date when we're talking about or doing this interview, but I can't not mention Simone Biles.
Yeah.
And she just announced that she was going to pull out when she pulled out of the team competition and pulled out the individual round for her mental health. In a way, I feel for her that she is in the spotlight of the entire world right now. But I'm so grateful for her because it has sparked, and a number of athletes, a number of celebrities have also been having these conversations. But I guess since she's the most recent example that I can think of, like I've been seeing everywhere on social media, bad things, but a lot of good things and a lot of support from other celebrities and other athletes who have a following of other friends that I have that are opening up and supporting her. And so I think, that's just another example of, like you said, of we can see things and people can see the top person in the world and top athlete in the world opening up about mental health. And to your point, is to show, no one is invincible from struggling with their mental health.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate because there's been not a lot. I just think some of the loudest voices are the most negative ones right now,
Yeah.
um, as far as the backlash against Simone Biles. But it really is like any other injury or anything else that would
Yeah.
get in the way of your performance as far as an athlete goes.
Yeah.
If it gets in the way of you being able to perform at your best,
Yeah.
to the point where it could be crippling, like a physical injury,
Yeah.
then of course you would have to take a step back. Um, it's like I saw someone try to compare, not to get too much into
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
subject of someone bias, but I saw someone try to say like, oh, Michael Jordan pulls out of a game seven for the NBA finals. But then there was literally a moment when Michael Jordan retired to go take a step away from basketball. So it's like he retired, he stepped away from the sport as well.
Yeah.
It's just the way that you look at, like you just try to pull like a very specific example or timing to make it sound bad.
Yeah.
Anyways, besides the point. Uh, Getting back to you because this is your episode, Ty. Um, Before I was on the crew with you,
Yeah.
you were one of the four first crew members. You not only spoke at the first event,
Mhm.
you helped to plan it and that's, we've discussed the May event a lot on this podcast.
Mhm.
But you also helped to create the art pop-up in Little Tokyo.
Yep.
Could you remind me, was that in 2019?
Oh gosh. Yes,
Okay.
2019. All
So,
the years blend now. Yeah.
right. Like it, yeah, the years definitely have been blending. Uh,
Pre-pandemic, pre-COVID,
got it. Okay,
like
that's
yeah.
definitely suitable.
Yeah.
But that's something that you helped to put together, help host. Can you explain a little bit about that art pop-up and what it meant to you?
Yeah. It was just such an cool and awesome opportunity. But how it came about is in Little Tokyo on First Street, 341 First Street, there's there was what was like a community space, but right in the middle of all the restaurants and all, it was a really awesome location that, different businesses or different groups or orgs had used to in different various reasons. But um, we lucked out. It came around, and I think in the month of February there was a vacant month that they were looking to fill, and so an opportunity came our way to if we could fill that space in any way, and if we want to use it. And so we didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but we were like, yeah, let's do it. Like we'll figure out we can make use of that. We couldn't say no because it was such an awesome opportunity. And so I think one of the first ideas that came up was something related to art. And so we were like, yeah, let's do an art pop-up gallery in that space because it was just perfect. It's the right space. It was the right amount of area and space to do that. It felt like, and I think we've learned that, or we had a lot of artists or just people who valued arts as a way of expression in the group. And so, yeah, within a few, I think I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks, we, sent out a call, asked for people to submit art for this pop-up that we would display in a gallery and keep up for the month. And that between the crew, one of us was always there to be there to open up and hold the space open for people to come take a look around and value the art. And to this day, it was one of my favorite CT things that we've ever done because I think for so many reasons, it was the art itself and the artists who submitted their stories it was just another way. It was basically them opening up about their mental health in a different way. They was them telling their story through their art. And, we had a little write-ups too that where they could explain more about what they did. And the way that people use art and the way people express themselves through art was so cool and so awesome. For example, there's a girl who her art was it was all these lines and really cool designs. And she had in her write-up said, I made this in the midst of one of my anxiety attacks. And I was like, that is amazing. Like that was like the first thing she turned to was art. And so you realize that art is so healing for so many people and so and it's the way so many people use to express. And so the art itself and the artists themselves were incredible. But then it was just the connections that we built with people who just frequented the place too. And to see them come in, either talk to us and just say, like, this is so cool because, I struggled on my own, or I've dealt with sort of things, or I know I have a friend, I have grandkids, I have parents, who've gone through same things and I'm learning more about it. And so that was the other part of it that I was just so grateful for, was to be able to physically and be there to see the impact that it was making on the people who were just appreciating the art and reading about it and reading the stories about the people behind it. And you submitted art too, so thank you for that. But yeah, so I think it was just all of it together culminated to such a great conversation. I know that's like the hot word of tides, but it really did create and start so many conversations beyond what I'm sure that we even got to witness and have within that space. Our hope was that people, went home and talked about it to other friends, to other families, or maybe it inspired them to open up about it or create their own art to express their mental health. And so, yeah, it was a really cool event and one I'm so grateful I was able to be a part of.
I was I it bums me out a little bit because I was in Chicago at the
Yeah,
time of it opening, so I wasn't even able to check out the space.
yeah,
But I think I can't say I understand because I wasn't in the space, but
yeah,
I could appreciate what made it so special in the sense that we have done amazing events, whether it was the mental health conference or the May events, whatever it has been. There's select speakers that are able to present.
Mhm.
But at this event, maybe not everyone was able to literally be there and speak,
Yep.
but it was so many submissions of
Yeah.
individuals where
Yeah.
it maybe was it might have been the event where we had the most stories shared and
Yep.
the most conversations started
Yeah.
all in one space.
Yeah.
So I think and it's all from community too. It's not people that we looked at and said, "Oh, we know you have an amazing story. Can you present?" It was
Yeah.
open submission, and I think that's
Yeah.
so beautiful about what made that special.
Yeah, and I think it's something that it's an example, I think, that Changing Tides offers and that we hope to continue to offer is this idea of, like you hit on, you don't have to be a speaker at an event to share your story, right?
Right.
It's how do we find more and more platforms and outlets for people to be able to open and feel comfortable to open up and talk about their story. Like, I don't know, that could have been the first time some of these artists had ever even mentioned it to anyone else, or and they did so in a way where they didn't have to grab a mic and speak in front of 50, hundreds, however many people. They're able to just put their art. And there's some people who, even if people have done art and not shown anyone, but they were able to address it with themselves, that's another way of being able to tell your story, even if it's, posting on your social media. There's so many more outlets that are beyond having to vocally tell someone or verbally tell someone or write down what you're feeling. I think there's so many more outlets out there to be able to express your mental health and express how you're going. And so I'm glad that art was able to be one example of that, but I'm hoping we can find more outlets to do that, in whatever other ways there are out there.
Um, so those are the questions I have for you. But is there anything that you'd like to say before we do jump to the quick fire round?
Um, I think what we kind of talked on a little bit earlier, but I guess my point being is that I know a common thing that I dealt with and struggle with, and even now struggle with, is like, how do you help other people if someone's struggling? Like, what do you do? And I think uh kind of just repeating what I said earlier is this just, now you don't have to go out and, my lesson isn't that you have to go out and talk to someone about their mental health and ask them if they're okay and, like, ask them to open up about their struggles. I think some people are in their own journey and their own process and ready. I think what I want to emphasize again is just there's other ways to show someone you're there for them. And I think, there's other ways to do it. And so whether you're a parent, whether you're a friend, whether you're the son or the daughter or wherever the child, you can be there for your parent. It's just show that you're an empathetic person, show that you know how to listen to someone, show that you can be there when someone needs you, and that, there's different ways to show that you're going to be able to show up for someone without having to have this conversation about directly about mental health. And chances are that when that person is ready, that they'll know that you're a person that they can go through. And I think that it's in itself is so valuable. And so I think that would be my one thing to say. It's just, yeah, don't feel like you have to, you know, be super intentional about having all these conversations. It's just the things that you do by just being a good person and kind person, you'll
Right.
help someone else, I think, out without even realizing it probably.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to be at the first May event, um, and to hear your story now, because I haven't been able to hear your story.
Mhm.
I thank you for your openness. I thank you for helping to establish Changing Tides, and I thank you for your openness today.
Thank
But
you. Yeah.
of
Providing
course,
a platform.
of course,
Yeah.
and I would love to get to the quick fire round if you are ready.
Let's do it.
All right. First one, if you could invite five people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be?
Whew. Five. Okay. On topic, I think Simone Biles. I think Naomi Osaka,
Wow.
because I think she's incredible. I think I don't want to just think about. I think Dan Levy from
Okay.
writer in Schitt's Creek. I'm obsessed with him. I love him. Uh, I think my grandpa, my mom's side, because I never got to meet him, and I'm
Mm.
curious to see, what his experience was like, and I would love to have a conversation about mental health with him. And John Wooden, I
Huh.
think. He was obviously go UCLA, but I think I've also, you know, read about him and his legacy, and he just seems like an awesome person too.
You have a lot of excellence at that table and like a lot of characters.
Yeah.
So that's a fun dinner for sure. What is a hidden talent of yours?
Hidden talent. I am really into like I guess design or in like interior design, and like this paneling behind me was something that me and my dad worked on and did for my room. And so it's been a new uh and I just moved into a new apartment. And so I've been getting to do a lot of things. Me and my dad just built like a little bar downstairs too. And so that's been a new recent thing that I've gotten to explore more. And I really take a lot of pride and joy in, I think. So designing.
Yeah, it looks very like your room looks amazing. So I think
It's a
I
work in progress,
okay.
but we're getting
No,
there.
it looks
Yeah.
no. I think you've earned the right to be
Thank you.
very proud of it.
Thank you.
On the other side, what is a skill you don't have but wish you did have?
Huh. I think just being able to let things go
Mm,
quicker. I think, I'm totally one of those people who just will something will sit with me for a really long time. And I think, unnecessarily so a lot of times too. And it goes back to just being hard on ourselves and people always make those jokes, but like, have you ever done something embarrassing like years ago and then it surfaces back in your mind and then you just like dread it, even though it was like years ago? Like, I feel like stuff like that happens all the time with me. And I think I want to get to the point where, past, things happen, own it, live up with
yeah.
it, move on and continue on with your life and you'll be okay. And so I think that would be a skill, just being able to let things go a little bit easier and a little bit faster.
I wish the same because I'll literally be driving and like one of those things will come and I'll like shiver while I'm
Existential
driving.
crisis all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah, those embarrassing ones, they hit me. Um, if you could give advice to yourself 5 years ago, what would it be?
My advice would be to find a way to adapt what you want for yourself.
Hmm.
I think I was always thinking I needed to have a one track mind of what I wanted to do or where I wanted to become or what would make me happy. But things change, life changes, and you just need to adapt and you'll be okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
What musical artist has been the soundtrack of your summer?
It's my summer. So far. So my roommate is obsessed with Dua Lipa. And so we have heard like her entire album several times, and I don't mind. I also enjoy it. She makes a lot of good music too out there.
Uh-huh.
But I think that would be the artist of my summer just by proximity.
No, that's fair because she also has hits. So
Yeah, yeah,
like they're
bangers.
probably on the radio all the time too.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's fair.
yeah,
And then to wrap it up, um, what would the title of your autobiography be?
yeah. Okay, this is so cheesy and so everyone always does this at work or at like texting, or they always say TY, but they'll
Uh-huh.
always the next text is always sorry, as in thank you, not as in your name. So I think it would literally just be TY, thank you. Because I think on
Ah,
topic, going back to the topic of gratitude, I think there's so much for me to be thankful for in my life. And I think we can all express gratitude towards the people in our lives and the things in our life. So I think that would be the title and the theme of my autobiography, hopefully, would just be gratitude and thanking others.
very good.
Yeah.
I love that actually. No, I don't think that's I think that's just a great play on words actually.
Oh, it's
Um,
another way for me to put my name out there.
and then Ty, thank you so much for being a guest. But before I let you go, I'm
Yeah.
going to close it on you explaining um, a little Changing Tides internal mascot named Tide. If you could please explain Tide, we'll probably share a picture with it. But if you could just
Thing
explain
showed up
it,
on the YouTube.
we'll share it. If you're listening on uh, a podcast platform, I recommend at least going to YouTube for this segment so you can see what Tide looks like. So Ty, please, could you please explain?
The one question I wasn't prepared for. Um, well, even though I loved and really appreciated our art pop-up, I would never consider myself an artist, which is very evident so by what eventually became apparently our unofficial mascot. But I think I don't remember what we were talking about. I think we were talking about stickers or like a shirt or something. Of we're like, how can we design it? And I was, we should do like keeping with our nautical theme, like a wave, like as in like the ocean wave, but also one that like kind of looks like it's waving. And everyone was like, yeah, like how does that work? Like what does that even look like? And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna draw it out so you guys can see. And so I drew out the picture and was like, here, like this is what I meant. It totally did not capture, I think, what I thought was gonna be great in my head, but has since then become a little bit of a beloved character and a little bit of a joke within the crew. But I think I've learned to love it, even though it was not my best art moment.
I think it's become I'm a little sad that I had to bring this up only because it was such an internal like changing tides thing, but I hinted at it in episode 1 with interviewing Cortland. I had to bring it up today. But Ty, thank you for sharing everything, especially the vulnerability when talking about Tide. But no, in all seriousness, thank you so much. It was an honor to hear your story and to share it via the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. You were the best host ever.
No, I think your episode when you were the host. Okay. Thank you to Ty for coming onto the podcast for the second time, but this time as the guest to share his story about his anxiety and just his mental health journey as a whole, about changing tides, and for introducing to you guys who Tide is and the fact that Tide is our little internal mascot. But yeah, it was a great episode. I hope it was great to you guys. I enjoyed the interview. And if you enjoyed this episode, you could go ahead and subscribe to our show. 4 episodes releasing on every other Tuesday, and give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you would like to support our podcast and help us grow, you can do so with a donation to the link at the bottom of the episode description. To hear more about Changing Tides, follow us on Instagram at LTSC_Changing Tides, or go to our website, thechangingtides.org. Let's continue to change the tides on mental health.
Yeah.